Hi, I'm R Sikoryak. I'm a cartoonist and the author of Constitution Illustrated, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics Podcast.
Welcome to a special edition of the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. It's May 15th, 2021. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. These podcasts are published to celebrate the exhibitors of this year's virtual edition of the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. TCAF is an annual event gathering comic book creators from around the world to promote broad and diverse voices towards the betterment of the medium of comics through panels, keynote exclusives, and just basically enjoying the fun of comics. On this episode, I chat with R Sikoryak at TCAF 2021. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Based in New York City, cartoonist R Sikoryak is the author of Masterpiece Comics and Terms and Conditions. He's adapted the classics of various comics anthologies, including Raw, Drawn Quarterly, The Graphic Canon, and more. His comics and illustrations have appeared in The New Yorker, The New York Times Book Review, The Nation, The Onion, Mad, and SpongeBob Comics, as well as A Daily Show with Jon Stewart. He's done storyboards and character designs for Augenblick Studios on various animated projects. Sikoryak teaches in the illustration department at Parsons, the New School for Design, and previously at the Center for Cartoon Studies. Since 1997, he's presented his live cartoon slideshow series, Carousel, around the United States and Canada. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with R Sikoryak at TCAF 2021. So I'm here with R Sikoryak. Thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate your time. What I normally do to start off the interview is ask the creator about their first comic book. So I'm wondering if you remember, what was the first comic book that you read?
That is a tough question. I have two older brothers who collected a lot of comics, and I read a lot of comics in the newspaper. I think the first comic that really had an impact on me was Peanuts.
Oh yeah,
by Charles Schulz. Seeing that in the newspaper every day, and then I collected all the books. And then my brothers and I collected a lot of Marvel comics. I grew up in the late '60s, early '70s, so it was a good time to be into superheroes. A lot of interesting things were happening. I guess they still are, but
right, yeah.
Very, very vital time. And as I say, they were older than me, so I was reading a lot of stuff they had around the house. But a lot of the Marvel stuff, like Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, that sort of thing.
It's cool. Lots of good stuff there, for sure. Yeah. So, wondering who or what influences your work today?
Oh, well, that's a good question, because I realized the other thing I was reading as a kid, I don't know if it was the first thing I was reading, but certainly had an impact on me, was Mad Magazine.
Oh, yeah.
So there were a lot of paperbacks of the early comics by Harvey Kurtzman and Will Elder and all the other great artists they worked with. And they were doing like really rigorous parodies of different comics and genres. And I think I'm still influenced by that stuff.
Right.
So that was like a deep influence. And then I was very lucky to get to work with Art Spiegelman and Françoise Mouly.
Wow.
At Raw Magazine.
Yeah.
And I worked with them. I published a couple of pages with them. And they are still a big influence. Their whole aesthetic really affected me. So I would say those are I'm influenced by lots of things, but I'd say those two are good starts.
Absolutely, for sure. We're here talking about the Toronto Comic Arts Festival, and I'm wondering if you have any favorite convention or festival moments that you'd like to share.
Oh, wow. I've been going to shows for so long. I'm trying to think of good ones. I remember running into Sergio Aragonés in an elevator.
Wow.
And I was a little shy, but he knows everybody knows him. He's so distinctive. He has his famous mustache, and he was very jovial and clearly was having a good time. But that was fun being in the elevator with him because it was like neither of us could escape. So that was fun.
Yeah.
One of my fond memories of TCAF was I was on a panel with Gary Panter, who is someone I have known a long time peripherally, but I have been a huge fan of his work forever, and I've met him a number of times, but being on a panel with him, I kind of felt like I'd arrived in a whole new way. Because he's just amazing. And I would say he's another influence indirectly with a lot of the stuff that I do.
That's cool. So want to talk about the project or book that you're exhibiting at TCAF. Wonder if you could talk a bit about it, maybe the origins of it as well.
Sure. So my new book is called Constitution Illustrated, and it is a complete word-for-word illustrated edition of the U.S. Constitution and all the amendments. And every page is drawn in the style of a different comic from the history of U.S. comics.
Oh, wow.
And it runs all the way from the Yellow Kid from like 1899 to like contemporary artists like Dav Pilkey, who does Dogman, and Raina Telgemeier, who does Sisters, and many other people. And I really tried very hard to represent as many different comic styles as I could, from newspaper comics, from comic books, from graphic novels, to web comics. I wanted it to sort of feel like the tapestry of the U.S., where it was sort of like the melting pot that America is supposed to be. I wanted to represent that. So every page of the book, and there's like 100 and some pages, every page is in a different style. And it grew out of me wanting to do some political work, but I didn't want to do anything with the president, who at the time was Donald Trump.
Right.
I'd already done a lot of work about him, and I didn't want to draw him again. Fingers crossed he wasn't going to win, and he didn't. So my book came out before the election, but I think the Constitution is still relevant as long as we want to use it. So I thought that'd be a valuable addition to the library.
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, I am just amazed, I'm sure as everyone is, about the variety of artistic styles that you use in your books. And I'm just curious about, how do you go about emulating that? Is that a conscious thing? Do you look at it and memorize it, or how do you approach it?
Oh, I wish I had a photographic memory. I don't. but what I do is I've been kind of using this approach most of my professional career. So I have a big library. I love digital comics. It's so good. I love the design and feel of paper books, but because I am so far-reaching in my references, I collect all kinds of things. So I pull stuff off the web. I buy things on Comixology. I still go to bookstores. I just do a lot of research, and then I compile like specific images that I might want to use to parody. I try to be very particular in my approach. So it's not just sort of a matter of matching the characters, but really trying to capture the compositional techniques and the color and everything else. So I have big digital files of people's work. Sometimes I'll photograph a page that I like and then I'll just put it in the file. I used to do all this on paper. But now I work almost completely digitally. Previously, I would make photocopies and I would make binders, and I still have many like 3-ring binders, like stuffed with references of long comic stories that I've done in the past. So, I've been doing it a long time, and I've been kind of moving with the technology of making comics. So, sometimes I'll actually ink it with the same kind of brushes they would use, but lately I've been doing most of it digitally in Photoshop. And a lot of people make comics that way. So in a way, I'm just following that trend as well.
Right, exactly. I'm wondering, not to tell tales out of school, but do you ever reach out to these artists before you do their work, or do you ever hear back from them after you're published?
I am very superstitious about telling people beforehand.
Okay.
Because I don't want them to say no.
Right.
And I think once it's happened, I've never had a bad experience. Of all the people I've parodied, I have followed up. I have sent them my work in some instances. And I did a very early parody of, for me in my career in like 1990, I did a parody of Peanuts that appeared in Raw, and I sent it to Charles Schultz, and he sent me back a very nice letter. It meant a great deal to me. I never met him. Yeah. That was my only interaction with him.
Wow.
But I was so flattered that he wrote me back, and he was so nice about it. You know, he was very encouraging, and, you know, by all accounts, a very nice man. And I was just thrilled. So I will often share it with people after the fact. And some people have said, "Oh, you should tell this artist you did this." And sometimes I get a little shy, but, you know, usually when I show it to them, they're flattered. You know, they see it as a tribute, which is what it is. You know, so yeah, that's generally how I do it. Sometimes I'm still a little reluctant. I haven't approached every living artist whose work I've parodied, but you know, if I've known them for a little while, I might go, "Hey, you know, I did this thing," or if someone says, "Yeah, they'll like it."
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Good stuff. So typically at conventions and festivals, people will come up and say, "I've got this great idea for a book or a comic. What do you recommend I do?" So I'm wondering, what advice would you have for those who want to get into this medium and try their hand at it?
You know, I think the thing that I think is really important is to start small. I do a lot of zines, a lot of black and white zines. My spouse, Creota Wilberg, and I often will do 24-hour comics where you make a comic in 24 hours as a way to generate material. You can't get too precious about it. You have to make it fast, and you get it done, and you see what you made. You know, you don't have to stay up all night to do your comics, but I think it's great if you, you know, set small goals. It's like, I'm going to do a 1-page story. I'm going to do a 6-page story. Not everyone, but many people, and including me, want to do like really long stories. And I always try to remind people it's better to start small. You know, do one scene with your characters, have them interacting, see how it goes. You know, put that out in the world, show it to people. You know, build up your strength and build up your confidence by doing like small pieces. Because I know when people have 200-page stories they want to tell, you can get lost.
Oh yeah, right.
And even Roz Chast, I remember hearing her say in an interview when she started making long form books, someone said to her to think in chapters, and she said that really helped her. And I could see, you know, as someone like, her work was often, you know, 1-2 pages long or gag cartoons. So even for her to kind of recognize better to start with like bite-sized chunks rather than go to a big story. You know, and if you didn't have a big story in mind, then you can even just start with single panel cartoons, you know. I think just putting in the time, practicing. Something I've been doing lately, which has been really helping me, is I got this actually from Mark Siegel at First Second. But he told me, well, not me, I was listening to him on a panel, but he said that when he was working on his long form books, and he does many different projects, but he would spend 15 minutes a day working on his graphic novel. So that's something I've actually started to do. So at some point during the day, some people like to do it in the morning. I tend to do it before I go to sleep. I just sit down and I work on my next project for 15 minutes so that it sort of stays in my head. I don't make a lot of progress, but, you know, I have a calendar that I check off every day that I work on it. So I can see on the calendar that, you know, I'm making progress, at least in terms of days. And it's only a 20-page story, but for me, that's pretty long. So, you know, it's good just to make a little bit of progress. I think that might also be good. I got a million ideas.
That's great advice for sure.
Oh, thanks.
So you just hinted there about something coming down the road. I wonder if you could talk about what's next for you. What do you have on your plate that you can talk about right now?
Okay, I'm a little superstitious about talking stuff before it comes out, but I will say, like 11 years ago it was, I put out a collection called Masterpiece Comics, which was literary classics drawn in different comic styles. And I am working on a sequel, and I am about halfway. Well, that might be a little optimistic. I think I'm about a third of the way through that book. So the long project I'm working on now is a story that will be in that. And it's an adaptation of Moby Dick. Oh, wow. I can't tell you any more about it than that, but I almost hate saying it out loud because you don't want to diffuse the energy. Right. But I think I've kept enough secrets that you'll still be surprised when you see it. So that's the long story I'm working on. So that and a couple of other adaptations will be in that book. I'm hoping to get that done in a few years. It's hard to know. Maybe I'll get distracted again with another project, but that's like that's my next big goal.
Very good. Very good. So the other important thing being at a convention or trade show, in addition to talking to people, is buying books. So I'm wondering, where do you recommend people go to buy your books?
Oh, well, you can certainly go to the TCAF website. They have an exhibitors page with everyone there. But if you're asking me just generally, I would say local independent bookstores or online independent bookstores are good. I try not to recommend the place that starts with A, but just about anybody else I'm good with. Spread the business around is what I say. So yes, you can get my work at all the indie bookstores. Some of my books are available digitally, which is understandable. People don't have shelf space for everything. And also, of course, my publisher, Drawn and Quarterly, bless them. They've been publishing me for over 20 years, and they do beautiful books, and you can buy from them directly. So drawnandquarterly.com.
Great. So where do you recommend that people go to find out more about you online for your current and future work?
All right. Well, I have a website that's fairly updated, and that's under my name, R Sikoryak, rsikoryak.com. And you can also find me as R Sikoryak on Twitter and Instagram. And you can just contact me if you have any questions. I'm available.
Sounds good. Well, those are all the questions I have for you, but I'm wondering if there's something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview.
I would just say I am a huge fan of TCAF. It's one of my favorite shows. I'm glad to be part of this show in this virtual space. Oh, I guess I should also mention I host evenings of comic book readings and other comics related performances called Carousel. I'm doing one this Friday. I don't know when the podcast will be out. I'm doing one Friday for TCAF, but you can also find out more about those shows at carouselslideshow.com. And you can read a bit more about those. I love the intersection of theater and comics. It's a whole other interview, but that's like something that I'm really interested in, and that's something that I kind of pursue as a hobby.
Thanks to R Sikoryak for the chat. You discover more about R Sikoryak on Twitter and Instagram at RSIKORYAK and online at rsikoryak.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2021.